Many of us have experienced this before. We've had a great meal, everything seems fine until the nausea sets in, your stomach is a bit queasy, and then you suspect you might have food poisoning. So we asked you for some of your questions, and today we're getting the answers from Professor Dale Fisher. He's an infectious diseases expert. People are unsure if what they're feeling is actually food poisoning or indigestion or something else. So how do we tell?
The whole concept of food poisoning, it can be caused by viruses, bacteria, or toxins that are produced by bacteria, and even worms can infect food. So a lot of terms are thrown around for something that's under the same umbrella, if you like, and whether that's food poisoning, which we might regard as the most extreme, through to stomach upset or stomach flu, things like this, you're really making the distinction based on the symptoms, the appearance, the way people are feeling, the clinical side of things, as opposed to a blood test or a formal culture or diagnosis like that.
Help us to understand why our bodies react the way they do when we have food poisoning.
So any foreign material that enters the body is recognized as foreign and the body reacts against it. That's the immune system. So the primary mechanism of that immune response is inflammation. The enterotoxin that's released in the stomach, imagine if the stomach becomes all swollen and inflamed, what's the reaction? Vomit. If it's happening at the bottom end, what's the reaction? It's diarrhea.
Professor, bring us through the principles of food handling, storage, food hygiene, and how these might or might not contribute to food poisoning.
So the principles of preventing food poisoning are really cut across everything. It's avoiding leaving food in that temperature zone of about 5 to 60 degrees. So this is why fridges are below 5, freezers are below 15 or 20. And when we're cooking, we want to get it up over 60 or 70 degrees to kill some of those organisms.
So should we be eating sushi, sashimi, or the oysters at the buffet?
Obviously the raw shellfish is risky, then it has to be stored properly. You avoid contact with other foods, eat it quite soon, keep it refrigerated, and if you're cooking it like clams or mussels, then really try and get it up over 70 degrees so that they're properly cooked and anything in there is killed. Sashimi and sushi are an interesting story because that's a very technical mechanism to make sure that that food's safe. So as soon as it's caught, it's frozen, ideally for at least 24 hours, and this sterilizes the fish. After that, if it's kept at 5 degrees or less, then it is safe to eat, as long as it's not contaminated along the way. So if someone's cooking, let's say there's raw chicken and sashimi in the same kitchen, if you're using a knife to cut the raw chicken and then you cut the sashimi, you could have contaminated that because this is sterile and the chicken isn't.
There would be a range of symptoms ranging from mild, moderate, or severe when it comes to food poisoning. Could you help us to identify those symptoms?
Well, the top end is going to be vomiting and abdominal cramps, and the bottom end is also cramps and diarrhea, obviously. You could have a fever, and it's the severity of these symptoms that matters. Those things themselves don't matter unless they're profuse. I would think the very young, the small children, elderly, pregnant women, maybe those with diabetes, other medical conditions, might want to have a lower threshold to presenting to a doctor. But by and large, the most people will be fine just going home and feeling sorry for themselves for a day, have a day or two off and bounce back.
So it's entirely safe to self-medicate if I think that it's not that bad?
Well, there's not much medication to do. You probably can't take a anti-vomiting tablet because you're vomiting. So if the vomiting is extreme, a doctor could certainly give you an injection to help you over that. So I probably wouldn't bother with diarrhea medications. I think the forces making the diarrhea happen aren't going to be solved with a couple of tablets. It's really about, it will get better by itself, but it's about keeping your hydration up. But if you can't keep up and it's becoming, because it's so severe, then that's when you go to the doctor.
When it comes to probiotics and prebiotics, there's so many opinions out there about whether they work or whether they don't work. Do they?
Certainly when you're unwell, I don't believe probiotics would do anything. This illness just has, the food poisoning just has to run its course, and it'll be over within, as I say, in a day or two.
Professor, how could food poisoning possibly lead to death?
So firstly, I just want to make the point that this is extremely rare, but it is possible. And in answering your question, the first mechanism would be severe dehydration. And this is when an elderly or a young baby, for instance, just can't keep up with the fluids needed. They can become acidotic in their blood and start to get kidney failure and things like this. I'm sure every pregnant woman is aware of the advice, or woman that's ever been pregnant is aware of the advice to not eat soft cheeses and to not eat deli meats and salamis and things like this that you wouldn't cook, because of the risk of listeria in those foods. And listeria can most certainly cause spread to the blood and cause a bacteremia. It can cause meningitis with infection of the brain and be very serious in that regard as well.
And Professor, how long would it normally take to recover from a bout of food poisoning?
It's really quite short. You'd really expect 1 or 2 days and you'd be over it. And indeed, if you were still getting worse at 2 or 3 days, then that'd be an indication to come to hospital and find out what's going on.
Professor, is food poisoning contagious? If I have it, could I spread it to someone else?
It's a foodborne illness. It doesn't spread like flu and COVID and things like that. And that if a food handler has diarrhea or abdominal pain or something, then that's a high-risk situation, and we would ask that person to not be preparing food. As for, could you just give it to someone else in your family, you would have to contaminate their food somehow.
A lot of us travel these days, and if we go away, what precautions should we take when eating or drinking water? And then if we do get a bout of food poisoning, what do we do?
So as always, it's best to prevent. So in looking where to eat, firstly, do the processors look good? Are they all washing their hands? Or is food, vegetables and meat all lying around together? This would be a very bad sign. Obviously, if the food smells off or looks off, then that means way too unacceptable. As far as water goes, water is obviously very risky in some countries. If it's not safe, or I'm not sure it's safe, then you really want to be boiling it or buying bottled water.
What are investigators looking for when they look into a mass food poisoning case?
The treatment for any of these sort of large-scale food poisonings is the same, and it's to go back to those practices of making sure the food is not infected at source. There should be a lot of interviews to find out what the practices were in any caterer or restaurant. And there should be a lot of retraining, I should imagine, to make sure that everyone is actually aware of what they should be doing, and maybe they did the course 20 years ago and now they've got a lot of bad habits, I don't know, but it's the practices of handling and preparation and storage that are really where the answer is.
And that's it for this Expert Answers on food poisoning. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think, and subscribe for more future episodes. I'll see you in the next one.